This is the true story of the Union Pacific Gas Turbine-Electric locomotives, known as Big Blow, based on verified historical records from Union Pacific Railroad archives, the Illinois Railway Museum, and General Electric documentation. All specifications, dates, and events have been fact-checked against primary sources. The year was 1955. In a wood-paneled boardroom in Omaha, Nebraska, Union Pacific executives faced an impossible problem. Their legendary big boys, the largest, most powerful steam locomotives ever built, were dying, not from mechanical failure but from economics. Coal was expensive, maintenance crews were expensive, and diesel locomotives? They were everywhere, but weak. You'd need 4 of them to match one big boy. Then a man from General Electric walked in with blueprints that seemed insane. "We can build you something more powerful than the big boy," he said, "with a jet engine." Not a diesel engine. A jet engine. The same technology screaming across the sky at 500 miles per hour now bolted to railroad tracks. Union Pacific wanted the biggest, the most powerful, the most audacious locomotive ever conceived. Or GE promised them exactly that. 8,500 horsepower. In cold weather, 10,000. The big boys had ruled the rails for 15 years. They could haul 4,200 tons up a mountain at 20 miles per hour. They were monsters, legends, mechanical marvels. But they were steam. And steam was finished. This is the story of what came next, the locomotive that was supposed to replace the irreplaceable, the machine that would become the most powerful locomotive ever to turn a wheel on American rails, and the jet-powered dream that lasted barely 10 years before vanishing into legend. Before we continue with the story of these jet-powered giants, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. The story of the Big Blows is just one of dozens of forgotten machines that nearly changed history. And if this gets 5,000 likes, I'll tell you about the steam turbine locomotive that came before the Big Blows and why it failed even more spectacularly. August 1958, Cheyenne, Wyoming. The sun hadn't fully risen when workers at Union Pacific's rail yard heard it for the first time, a sound unlike anything they'd ever experienced. Not the rhythmic chuffing of steam, not the diesel growl they'd grown accustomed to. This was different. This was terrifying. It started as a distant whine like an aircraft coming in low. Then it built, higher, louder. The ground itself seemed to vibrate. Men covered their ears, windows rattled in their frames, and then they saw it, Union Pacific No. 1, the first Big Blow. Stretching 179 feet, longer than a 737 airliner, the 3-unit monster looked like something from science fiction. The A unit housed the control cab. The B unit, that's where the magic happened. Inside sat a General Electric frame, 5-gas turbine, 16-stage compressor, 10 combustion chambers, 2-stage turbines spinning at temperatures hot enough to melt steel, the exhaust. It shot from roof vents at 150 miles per hour at 850 degrees Fahrenheit. The noise? They'd hear it coming from 5 miles away across the Wyoming plains. This wasn't evolution, this was revolution. But here's what made it brilliant. It burned bunker C, the bottom of the barrel crude oil that refineries practically gave away. Thick as molasses at room temperature. They had to heat it to 200 degrees just to pump it. And the turbine consumed it at 600 gallons per hour, faster than you could fill a swimming pool. Council Bluffs, Iowa to Ogden, Utah, 800 miles of the most demanding railroad terrain in America. Sherman Hill, Echo Canyon, the Wasatch Range, mountains that had broken lesser locomotives. This became Big Blow territory, and they dominated it. No. 1 alone racked up 750,000 miles in just 5 years. That's 30 trips around the Earth, hauling freight trains so heavy they'd snap the couplers on anything else. Operating alone, no helpers, no diesels trailing behind, These turbines did what took 4 conventional locomotives to accomplish. The crews who ran them called them sure-footed, reliable. One engineer described it: you could be pulling a 6,000-ton train up Sherman Hill, and that turbine just kept singing, never complained, never faltered. Just that constant jet engine scream and all that power flowing to the wheels. Union Pacific was so confident they ordered 30 of them, numbers 1 through 30. Each cost $540,000 in 1958, about $6 million today. The railroad planned to number them in the 7,000 series, but changed course. These machines deserved their own identity. At their peak, Big Blows moved more than 10% of Union Pacific's entire freight operation. Think about that. 30 locomotives in a fleet of thousands handling a tenth of one of America's largest railroads' tonnage. The math wasn't just impressive, it was revolutionary. The turbines had proven themselves. They'd done the impossible. They'd actually replaced the big boys. And that's when everything started to fall apart. 1962, Los Angeles, California. Union Pacific dispatched a big blow westward for trials. The plan was simple: demonstrate the turbine's capabilities to potentially expand operations into California. What happened next became railroad legend. The turbine rolled into the city at dawn, and Los Angeles lost its mind. The jet engine scream, already notorious across Wyoming's empty plains, became something else entirely when bouncing off buildings and concrete. Windows shattered, car alarms that didn't exist yet would have been screaming. People thought a plane was crashing. Emergency calls flooded police stations. One witness described it. It sounded like the world was ending, this unholy shriek that made your teeth vibrate and your ears ring for hours afterward. And it just kept coming, getting louder. This yellow and grey monster that looked like it had escaped from tomorrow. The city banned them outright. Union Pacific received word: no turbines in Los Angeles, period. Similar restrictions followed in other cities. The big blows were too loud for civilization. They could only operate where nobody lived. But the noise was just the beginning of the problems. That cheap bunker C fuel. The plastics industry discovered it. Suddenly, refineries could charge premium prices for the bottom-of-the-barrel crude. Fuel costs exploded. The turbine's main economic advantage evaporated overnight. Then came the maintenance nightmares. Those delicate turbine blades spinning at impossible speeds. The corrosive ash from Bunker C ate them alive. Repairs became constant, expensive. The decline of the big blows was just beginning. But first, let me know in the comments, would you have wanted to ride in the cab of one of these jet-powered monsters? Or does the thought of 850-degree exhaust screaming past your head at 150 miles per hour sound like a bad idea? Drop a comment, and don't forget that like button helps more people discover these lost chapters of railroad history. December 26, 1969. A day after Christmas. The Wyoming winter had settled in hard, temperatures below zero, that kind of cold that makes steel brittle and breath freeze mid-air. Union Pacific No. 7 fired up its turbine for the last time. The familiar whine built to its characteristic scream, but this time everyone knew this was the end. Just 11 years. That's all the big blows got. The locomotives that were supposed to rule the rails for decades were being mothballed after barely a decade. Numbers 1 through 4 had already been retired the previous summer. The rest were lined up in storage yards, silent, waiting for the scrapper's torch. What went wrong? Everything and nothing. The turbines did exactly what they were designed to do. They were more powerful than the big boys. They hauled massive tonnage. But they proved the technology worked. Number 1's 750,000 miles in 5 years wasn't just impressive, it was unprecedented. But the world changed around them. Diesel technology leapt forward. EMD and GE built new diesels producing 3,000, then 3,600 horsepower. You could lash three together and match a Big Blow's power with half the fuel consumption, a quarter of the maintenance costs, and no noise complaints. The bunker C that made the turbines economical became expensive. The plastic boom of the 1960s created demand for exactly that bottom-grade crude. What refineries couldn't sell in 1958, they fought over in 1968. February 1970. The last two Big Blows, numbers 18 and 26, sat silent in the Cheyenne roundhouse, still in operating condition, still capable of that jet engine scream. But the turbine era was over. Union Pacific sold them all for scrap. 28 of the 30 most powerful locomotives ever built went to the cutting torch. Their exotic GE Frame 5 turbines, their 6-axle trucks, their massive fuel tenders, all reduced to recycled steel. Only two survived. Number 18 sits today at the Illinois Railway Museum, number 26 at Ogden Union Station in Utah. 3 unit sets, 179 feet long, still painted in UP's armor, yellow and gray. Silent monuments to a technology that came too soon, or too late, depending on how you see it. Here's the thing about the Big Blows that nobody talks about. They worked. That's the tragedy. They weren't failures. And they did everything Union Pacific asked of them. They moved freight. They climbed mountains. They proved a jet engine could power a locomotive. But they were born into a world that was still changing, and they couldn't evolve fast enough. The diesel locomotives kept getting better, quieter, more efficient, more practical. The turbines were spectacular, but practical always wins over spectacular. That 8,500 horsepower record, it still stands. No locomotive has ever been built with a more powerful prime mover. The Big Blows set a mark in 1958 that nobody's beaten in over 60 years. They were supposed to replace the big boys, and for a brief, glorious decade, they did. They were the most powerful locomotives ever to turn a wheel on American rails. And then, like the steam locomotives they replaced, they became history. Sometimes the future doesn't last as long as we think it will. Both surviving Big Blows are open to the public. Illinois Railway Museum outside Chicago has number 18, and the Ogden Union Station in Utah displays number 26. If you ever get the chance, stand next to one. They're bigger than you imagine. And if you liked this deep dive into forgotten railroad history, check out the video I just posted about the experimental turbine that Union Pacific tried before the Big Blows. It's linked in the description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.